Start recording. I hope that it will work fine. As far as our content today goes, we move to chapter 3 in the book, Auction and Allen, which is titled Cost and Choice. And what's going on? Is it someone else's laptop doing something funny or mine? I'm like a semi-technophobic, so whenever something funny starts going on, I'm always afraid that my equipment is going to fail, that I did something wrong. Just so you know. So, what was I talking about? Okay, cost and choice. There are 3 or 4 main things we're going to be covering. It's like the first one, that, as you may remember, actually, the discussion of the relationship between cost and choice was one very prominent topic from the very beginning. Here we're going to follow up with a few points, few finer points about the nature of cost, and we're going to introduce one concept that will be discussed maybe even more later on. That is related to concept of cost. It's concept of external costs, or externalities. And I'm going to do a kind of typology of different types of costs, division of different types of cost, different definitions of cost. In addition to that, we're going to spell out some of the, now that's the cost part. The choice part is actually going to spell out a few basic principles of economic choice. Principles or postulates of choice. It's a kind of a brief analysis of the nature, character, and meaning of choice for economics. Philosophers would say like a phenomenology of choice. Some basic characteristics of choice that are relevant for economics always. Okay, so let's start first with the concept of cost, division of different types. You're already familiar with some of the discussion related to the concept of cost. We've seen already that in a fundamental economic sense, every cost is opportunity cost. That's the basic type. So this is the most fundamental thing that you can learn about the cost. That cost is always the value of opportunities forgone that you have to sacrifice in order to achieve anything. Cost is always related to choice. Choice is always based on subjective preferences. See, preferences or wishes or wants is what it is all about. That's the true cause of everything that we do. Then we make choices based on our preferences, and we pay costs, which are opportunity costs, which means that we are sacrificing other possibilities, making choices in conditions of scarcity. choices with scarce resources, which means resources or things that have multiple uses, and we have to decide among these potential different uses. That our preferences are conflicting, we want more than one thing, and we have to decide which ones are going to be satisfied and which ones are going to be sacrificed. This is opportunity, cost. It is, as you can see here, this is one of the points in which you can see maybe in the clearest fashion that everything that is going on in an economy, in an economic life, is always based on human action that is geared towards satisfying human preferences. Subjective issues and subjective preferences are causal factors in economics. This is the reason why a long time ago, maybe 100 years ago, in America, a school of thought emerged. It was influenced by the European developments. It said that economics is a psychological science. There is a close connection between economics and psychology. And the reason for this was that people realized that why we do what we do as producers, consumers, traders, is always based on our psychological states of mind and our wishes and our wants. That these things are what drives economic life, not some anonymous material forces that operate independently from us. That's the way how people naively very often see economics. Market is an impersonal force that works in and of itself without any input or contribution from us. It's an inhumane, cold mechanism, and economics is all about material things and trade and production. They very well realized, some of the most sophisticated economists, that human psychology is what causes economic action. Now, what is the difference between economics and psychology, or what is the difference in their treatment of human mind and consciousness and wishes and wants? Is that psychology tries to understand why people do what they do. Sometimes to correct when they do something which is not healthy for them. Whereas economics, as we know, takes our wishes, preferences, and wants, and the reasons for them as given. Remember, economics is a value-free science, so we cannot say, as economists, anything about whether what we want and what we do is good or bad. But at any rate, the true content of economic analysis, the true causes of economic phenomena are in human brain, human mind, rather than in the outside world. The outside world is just a manifestation of, in the real world, action resulting from our wishes is taking place. But it is caused by human brain. So the concept of cost has to be redefined as subjective, individual, and unpredictable, and always tied to an act of choice. I told you that already, I think, during the second class, just reminding you of that. Cost is subjective. Why cost is subjective?
Because one person will pay more than another person would for something than the other.
Okay, but why cost in terms of opportunity cost is a larger cost understood as the value of opportunity forgone, whether this opportunity involves paying something in money or not. So you came to class, you couldn't do something else. That something else that you haven't done is the opportunity cost of your choice. Why is that cost understood in that way subjective?
Because it means something different to everyone.
Yeah, it could. Yeah, usually that's the case. And different people have different reasons for doing things, and Nobody else cannot have the access to the content of any other person's consciousness. That's the reason. It's a subjective act of choice. Only you can know what was the second best alternative at the moment of choice for you. You can tell me, but I may or may not believe you. So that's what it means, that the cost is subjective. It's tied to an act of choice, which means only at the moment of choice. Cost exists only at the moment of choice. Once the choice has been made, cost is zero. There is no cost anymore. You're staying in class now is costless. It doesn't cost you anything right now. It costs you at the moment when you decided to come here, or probably at the moment when you entered the door. Now, you may get bored, you may get sleepy, you may get second thoughts about something else better that you might have done, but that's not the cost of your choice. That's a negative consequence of your choice. So we have to distinguish between the cost, which is essentially a subjective state of mind at the moment of choice. You know, our preference scales, just to remind you, are we sometimes say ordinal, which means they're ordered on a list, like first thing, second thing, third thing, fourth thing. At the moment of choice, coming to class was first in your list, and something else was second. And this second thing on the list was probably different for many people, and only you can know what was that. And that may have changed afterwards. And that was the cost, whatever, playing poker. I don't know why I like this. This is some Freudian slip. Always talking about playing poker as the second best alternative. Although chess playing. So, playing poker, maybe 5 minutes down the road, you've changed poker to chess or to whatever, running or reading, so on. But once the choice has been made, the cost is zero. Cost is just a subjectively felt loss that you have at the moment of choice. You play tennis, example in your book. What is the cost of your choice? The cost of your choice is the second best alternative, something else, table tennis or chess, or watching television. If you play chess and you've got a sore arm, that's not the cost of your choice. That's just a negative consequence of your choice. So negative consequence is not the same as cost. So you see now that concept of cost is complicated when you try to analyze it thoroughly, that monetary costs of something do not tell you the full story about the cost. So when we say something cost me $100, and we take this seriously, the cost of that was $100, what we usually mean is actually that $100 is a symbolic representation of abstract economic value. What that means? That means that $100 represent any bundle of goods and services that we can buy for $100. If I pay a laptop for $300, it costs me $300. But the real meaning of that is not that I lost 3 or 5 pieces of paper with the government of the United States imprint on it. The real meaning of that is that there are other things worth $300 that I could have bought. that I have sacrificed by buying a laptop. And once I made a purchase, it's gone. Any bad experience that I might have with a laptop, like difficulties of recording a lecture or any kind of bugs and viruses and so on, that's just a set of consequences of my choice. The costs are at the moment of choice. When I decided that I'm not going to be buying whatever else I could have bought for $300 that I paid a laptop. So these two concepts are the key: subjectivity and the fact for cost. Subjectivity and the fact that cost is tied to choice, to the moment of choice, to the moment in time. Okay. Any questions thus far? Externalities. I promised just a few words about that. We're going to be, so don't worry too much about externalities now. I will just give you a definition what is external costs. So sometimes the assumption in economics is that you always pay the costs of your actions, and me or anyone else. Every individual chooses your choice, your cost. However, sometimes it seems that by making our choices, we can inflict costs on other people without compensating them for that. These types of situations are called externalities, or external costs. So when I buy a laptop, the cost of my choice is anything else that I could have bought. I internalize the costs. To say that I internalize the cost means that I bear the cost or pay the costs. However, sometimes I may make choices that will inflict costs on third parties or other people that I will not compensate them for. And these types of situations are called externalities or external costs. So these externalities or external costs could be positive or negative. Positive, negative. What are positive externalities? These are the types of situations in which you confer the benefits. By making your choices, you provide other people with benefits for which they don't pay. So these are positive externalities. So these are not actually costs that you inflict on other people, but the benefits that you provide them for, that they don't pay for in the market. Let's say I renovate my house. You're my neighbors. I renovate my house. I invest heavily in that, and the appearance, my house and my backyard and my fence is much nicer. So then the neighborhood becomes more appealing, and the prices not only of my house but also of your houses increase because of an improved look of the neighborhood. So you get the pecuniary benefits, you get the monetary benefits for which you didn't pay anything. I did it out of my own economic selfish interest to improve the value of my property, but in doing so, actually, I contributed to the economic value of your property as well. So that's external benefit. I provided you with some benefits, you didn't pay me for it. You hang out with some nice people who know a lot of things. They make you a better person. You learn some things for which you don't pay anything. That's benefit. That's an external benefit. So now, as you can see, this phenomenon is rather widespread. This is very often you benefit in pecuniary, monetary, or non-monetary fashion from other people without paying for that. But this is a less problematic positive externalities. You don't need to lose much sleep over them. Bigger problem are negative externalities, which means that I'm doing something that benefits me, but that harms you, and I'm not forced to pay for that. So one example of that would be environmental pollution. I build a power plant or an industrial facility. I emit sulfur dioxide in the air, which pollutes the air and the soil, and it falls with the rain as the acid rain and damages your crop. You are a nearby farmer, you have corn or soybeans, and the pollution that my factory creates harms your property. So you lose money, you lose income because of my selfish profit-seeking actions that inflict damage on you that I'm not forced to compensate you for. So that's this concept of externality, actually. I do something to benefit myself, but I harm you. However, I'm not forced to compensate you for the damages I inflicted upon you, is one of the key theoretical justification of governmental regulation of business. Concept of externality. So you know about this, what is the story about climate change regulations, climate change policies. What is justification for that? Like the oil and coal companies are especially targeted as villains that had to be controlled by the government. So what is the climate change policy that many politicians and experts and scientists propose? What is the rationale for them, John, please?
Cap and trade.
Yeah, that's cool. What is cap and trade, and what is the theoretical basis for that? What is the argument why climate change happens? Anyone knows? What is the cause of climate change, and what is the remedy then to prevent it or to moderate it? What is the main cause of climate change? One satanic guess, satanic quote unquote.
The carbon footprint of the coal industry.
Carbon dioxide is a gas emitted by all kinds of industrial plants, cars, airplanes. It's a gas that is being emitted when you burn the carbon fuels. You have carbon plus oxygen that burns, and as a byproduct of process of burning carbon fuels, such as oil, coal, and so on, you get byproduct carbon dioxide. What is the problem with carbon dioxide? Carbon dioxide is the so-called greenhouse gas, which means that if you emit more carbon dioxide, it functions as a blanket over Earth. So the sun rays come to the atmosphere. The way how planet warms is actually infrared radiation that irradiates off the surface of the Earth. And if you increase the thickness of this blanket by adding more carbon dioxide, the planet cannot cool off sufficiently. Heat is trapped in the atmosphere and the temperature is increasing. That's the so-called greenhouse effect. So now, what is the argument? Who is doing the damage? Who is inflicting this externality? Oil and coal companies and every one of us who drives cars. That's why environmentalists hate cars. Because all of us who drive cars are climate criminals. There are some people who describe car drivers and oil and coal companies as climate criminals. What we do, we actually burn fossil fuels to benefit ourselves. But we inflict damage to us and all other people by increasing the carbon footprint, increasing the carbon dioxide content in the atmosphere, increasing the temperature, increasing the damages from weird weather in the future and the global warming. So now we benefited ourselves, but we haven't compensated present and future generations for the damages from climate change that we inflicted. And hence we need what John said, cap and trade. That's one of the policy approaches. We say, United States can emit only so far only so much carbon dioxide per year. That's cap. And then you get the permissions. You spread the permits to emit carbon dioxide, and then you let people trade with these permits. If you're a coal company, you need more permits to emit. You buy from someone else who doesn't need so much. So it's a system of rationing. It's a system of limiting the carbon dioxide emission. So that's a policy, essentially amounts to taxing carbon fuel consumption. That's one form of taxation. If you want to burn the fossil fuels, you have to pay for it by buying these scarce permits. So externalities are these costs. So climate change is a classical example, and all kinds of environmental regulations. So the theory of externality, sometimes it is called the second generation market failure theory. It is very often used. You see, market fails. We trade, we buy and sell cars, airplanes, we use fossil fuels freely, but we create some costs to the third parties that are not compensated. Market cannot solve the problems such as environmental pollution, climate change, and so on. So just so you know, this is one of the, in the typology of costs, this is one of the very important ones that plays a central role in all kinds of theories of government intervention. Government interventionism. Okay, any questions? Thus far? Okay, if not, let's move to typology of choice. So first thing, so you call it observation number one. Observation number one. It's a simple observation. Who makes choices? Individuals. So methodological individuals. So forgive me if I'm repeating some of the things that I already said, but I wanted you to have a neat and precise overview of some of the main characteristics of choice. Some of the things will be new that I'm going to say, but this one, no, methodological individualism, which means it is individuals who make choices. And in studying human action and in studying economic phenomena, we always have to start from individual level. That doesn't mean that individualism is a correct moral theory, that individual well-being should be more important than collective well-being, but it means that analytically and methodologically, individual is the smallest unit of analysis. Observation number two. So human action is individual, number one. Number two, human action always happens in conditions of uncertainty. This has profound implications for our understanding of economics. That means that there are two kinds of efficiency in economics. Ex ante and ex post. Ex ante efficiency means what you think at the moment of choice about what is the best course of action. You know this. Why did you do it? It looked like a good idea at the time. So that's ex ante efficiency. Why did you do something that looks stupid right now, even to you? It looked like a great idea at the time. How this could happen? Of course, because we don't know precisely the effects of our actions, and we live in an uncertain world. So ex ante efficiency of economic choice is what people believe at the moment of choice. Before it happened, that's why it's ex ante. They should do ex post efficiency. Is this, how could you do it when it's obviously so stupid? Yeah, it's in hindsight, it's obviously stupid. but at the time it looked like a great idea. So this is uncertainty is the key reason why we have entrepreneurship, why we have many different economic phenomena that are part and parcel of economic analysis. I'll give you just a couple of them. Entrepreneurship, speculation, middlemen, phenomenon of middlemen in economics, intermediation. All of these phenomena stem from the fact of uncertainty and limited knowledge. Uncertainty, when you say that the world is uncertain, that's the same as saying that we have a limited knowledge about the future. So what is speculation? In entrepreneurship, they're almost synonymous. That's dealing with uncertainty. Who is the entrepreneur? Entrepreneur is a person who risks scarce resources by devoting them to a certain, let's say, production process, and then waits a certain period of time. Production takes time. So you don't know at the moment, so you have to save the money. Remember, in order to invest, in order to produce, you have to invest. You have to have a capital available to invest. How can you have a certain amount of capital available? By saving it, which means refraining from consumption, which means sacrificing, or by borrowing it from somebody else who saved it by sacrificing consumption. So you have to make the real sacrifices right now to invest and then start producing something without knowing full well whether you're going to earn enough revenue to cover the costs and earn profit or not. So that's the same phenomenon as any other human action. It's just more obvious for us. Whatever you do, you're an entrepreneur, actually. Whenever you decide to do something, you are betting, you are gambling, actually, that it will be ex-post efficient, that you will be satisfied with the results of your choices. And you may not be. And people whose ex-ante and ex-post efficiency are very close are called wise people or smart people. Entrepreneurs whose ex-post and ex-ante predictions are close are called wealthy people, successful entrepreneurs. So people who are good in guessing the future, which means guessing the existence or non-existence and magnitude of demand for the product that they decided to produce. Middleman, intermediation. Middleman, who is that guy or girl who connects together people who want to perform economic exchanges, who don't know about each other. Lack of knowledge, limitations of knowledge. Retail stores are middlemen. How retail stores reduce the costs of insufficient knowledge. You want to buy tomatoes? If there were no retail stores, what would you have to do? You have to find out about the farmer somewhere in North or South Dakota who sells tomato, which is good. That costs time and money. You may not be able to do it. So somebody else specializes in reducing the information costs for you, reducing the, increasing your knowledge that is necessary for economic transactions. Banking and financial system. How banking and financial systems reduce uncertainty and reduce the information gap or increase the level of information. Come on, you're business students. Tell me something about banking system. What is the definition of banking system? How it works? What is the purpose of banking institutions? They connect together two groups of people.
Savers and spenders.
Savers and spenders, or we can say lenders and borrowers. Lenders or savers, and borrowers. We say spenders, but spenders in a more, in a wider sense, not only people who spend on consumer goods, but also entrepreneurs who borrow money to spend on capital goods, invest. Consumer and investment spending. So this is one of the logical tricks, actually, if you're trained even a little bit in philosophy. In order to understand some phenomena, sometimes it's good to assume that it doesn't exist. And see what happens. Imagine that banks do not exist and you still want to perform the service, to perform the transactions of lending and borrowing. What would it be like? What that kind of world would be like? Imagine yourself in a role of a lender or a borrower in a world without financial intermediaries, in a world without banks. So let's say that you saved some money and you want to lend it to somebody. How would you do it? Now you put the money in a bank and they take care of it. They find the borrower, they vet the borrower, the credit worthiness, and they perform the whole thing. If there were no banks, you would need to find the borrower, somebody who needs money now, and you will have to make sure yourself whether this person is a credit worthy or not, or to evaluate the risk of this person defaulting on debt, to charge an interest rate that corresponds to the level of risk of default. It's a lot of pain in the neck and losing time and learning. And your time and energy have opportunity costs. You have bigger fish to fry. You have more important things to do in your life, probably. So you see, the banks are just like all other entrepreneurs, institutions that specialize in reducing uncertainty and information bottlenecks and information costs. As a borrower, you don't have to go around looking for somebody who saved money and want to lend it to you. As a lender, you don't have to go around and seek potential borrowers and lose sleep over whether they are credit-worthy borrowers or not. So this financial intermediation is also a type of entrepreneurship. Okay, so we will be coming back to this problem of uncertainty and risk all the time. This is one of the key problems in economics. If we knew the future, then economic problem is very simple. Things will be, if we can predict what's going to happen in the future, we wouldn't need a free market system at all. One of the key points, one of the key roles of the market price system and free market is actually to allow us to increase the benefits or to reduce the costs and disadvantages of our limited knowledge and uncertainty about the future. By allowing different kinds of people to specialize in taking risks on our behalf. Essentially. That's what entrepreneurs do. If I'm the owner of a company or my employees, I'm the residual risk taker, which means that we start producing something. Now, we're going to sell it in 1 year or 6 months. I have to provide the funds for equipment and machinery and electricity costs and rental costs and wage costs. I have to pay you to work for me for 1 year. If we hit the market with our product and eventually we fail, of course, you're going to lose the job probably, but you're not going to be losing your wages that you earned. I'm going to be losing my investment completely, my losses 100%. So the level of risk is infinitely higher for entrepreneurs than for non-entrepreneurs. You're not risking you provide services to me, you're paid for the services, you cannot lose your money. You don't have to pay me back your wages if we go bankrupt. Whereas I have to pay back my, it's called lenders. Creditors. I have to pay back my creditors even if I fail. And this is a relatively rare talent. You might think that people are good entrepreneurs, but the minority of people are entrepreneurs. Probably less than 5% of people have a real entrepreneurial talent. It's a very precious breed. Okay, I have 7 or 8 minutes. Okay, now these are 2 preliminary observations. Now we'll talk about a couple of further principles or postulates of choice. Postulate number 1. We can say, or we can say a key characteristic of choice number 1. Each person seeks multitude of different goods. Everybody. So we are usually not satisfied with one good. We don't want to waste all our money or resources on acquiring just one good. Every one of us seeks the multitude of different goods. What are goods? How we define goods in economics? What is a good?
Something you want to have.
Something that we want?
Yeah.
Why we want it? Because it has a capacity to satisfy our needs. Goods could be free or economic. A free good is something that we don't have to sacrifice anything to acquire. Air and water would be examples of that. We can consume them in unlimited quantities, and we don't limit the ability of other people to consume it in unlimited quantities. Economic or scarce goods are those goods that have to be rationed, that our consumption of them affects the ability of other people to consume it. When I buy a loaf of bread in a store, that reduces marginally the quantity of bread available to every one of you. That's the reason why bread has a price. You have to pay for it, because there is more people who want to use bread than there is available bread, or cars and everything else. These are economic goods, have to be rationed. They're rationed by prices. Some people find prices too high and don't buy. They're outside of the market, outside of the exchange network. People who pay the price, they're in. Whereas with air, everybody breathes and nobody pays anything. Nobody has to sacrifice anything. When you pay $2 for a loaf of bread, you're sacrificing $2 worth of other things that you could have bought. When you inhale air, you don't sacrifice anything. You just do it. And everyone else can inhale and exhale as much as they want without jeopardizing the ability of other people to breathe equally. So, free and economic goods. Important point here. Free good in economic sense is not to be confused with free in terms of free healthcare and free education. So remember that. This is not Bernie Sanders' free Medicare for all. Why is that the case? Why this free goes under between the quotation marks, and this free is free of
Taxpayers have to pay
Yes, somebody pays. The fact that you don't pay as a consumer doesn't mean that it is free. So it's not free. In Canada, we have a very neat formula. Any Canadians here? Oh, yes. So you know our healthcare system is free at the point of use, which means the final consumer, when you get treated, you usually for most medical procedures, you don't pay anything. But does that mean that the services of nurses and doctors and the use of MRIs and the use of dental equipment, that all of that is free in the same sense in which your breathing is free and your consumption of water on a brook is free? No, it means only that somebody else pays the costs for that. So that's one very important point to bear in mind, that what is economically free good is not politically what is politically free good, free quote unquote. We have 1 or 2 minutes left. Okay, I better stop here. So we're gonna finish, we haven't finished chapter 3. So on Friday, hopefully we will begin chapter 4, but before that, we'll have to finish chapter 3. So I will post the homework assignment for you on Friday, and it will include only the first 3 small chapters that we. Okay, any final questions? No. Okay, have a nice day all and see you on Friday.